What's up, YouTube? Today is a new YouTube video. Yes, I got a lot of time on my hands. Well, actually, I wouldn't say a lot of time because somewhere in week 2 or somewhere in week 2, week 3, or week 4, I'll be working 3 to 4 times a week at my job. And you won't be getting as many YouTube videos as you're getting as of right now. And then when we get to a month later in the first week of October, I'll have no choice but to go to downtown Los Angeles and call and go to jury duty service. I mean, if I get selected and picked, it's going to last for the whole day. And you better keep your fingers crossed, because if I go to the 9th floor, that's where they have those murder trials. And those can take 3 to 6 months. And nobody likes going to court. Nobody likes jury duty because it's a pain in the ass. And all it does is slow you down from doing other stuff that's far more important. But that ain't the point. Now, the point of this video is going to be called the Detroit Pistons versus the Golden State Warriors. It's going to be Detroit Pistons versus Golden State Warriors, NBA, who's better, Isiah Thomas versus Stephen Curry. Not to be confused with the Isiah Thomas that played on the Boston Celtics. Not that Isiah Thomas. The Isiah Thomas who wrote a book 25 years ago from today called The Jordan Rules. That Isiah Thomas. The one that loved beating Michael Jordan and the Chicago Bulls every single time they played in the NBA playoffs. The Isiah Thomas that, if you look at pictures from 25 years ago, he actually walked up to Magic Johnson. I kid you not, this actually happened in professional basketball, in professional sports, and he actually kissed Magic Johnson on the forehead. That Isiah Thomas, the one that was the head coach of the New York Knicks, the team that don't go nowhere, to lose every NBA season. That Isiah Thomas. Now, when you think of great basketball teams, great franchises, you think of teams like the Los Angeles Lakers, the Boston Celtics, the Chicago Bulls. You think of teams like that, right? The San Antonio Spurs. You think of teams like that. Now, back in the day, the Detroit Pistons were in the city of Indiana. They played in Indiana in a little high school setting because they were not going to put no money into this team. In the early days of the Pistons, they weren't even called the Detroit Pistons. I think they were called the Indiana Pistons or something like that. And after being in a town for like 10 or almost 12 years, they moved and relocated to a place called Detroit, Michigan, and renamed the basketball team the Detroit Pistons. By this time, it was the late 60s, early 1970s, and this team was still a horrible NBA franchise. They couldn't win no basketball games in the season. They failed to make playoffs. They had all these players, but they had no top draft picks, and it was just terrible. And it weren't until the late 70s, early 80s that they got a point guard by the name of Isiah Thomas that stood at 5'6", 155 pounds, and could play 4 quarters of a basketball game. Once drafted into the NBA, this guy was a force to be reckoned with. This guy would steal the basketball from you a total of 8 times. He could score all 4 quarters. The guy could score with his eyes closed and hit 3-pointers. The guy could make layups, reverse layups. The guy had mad crossovers. But the guy was so athletically gifted that the one thing that people picked at was his size. You're 5'6", 5'7". You're not exactly a big basketball player. You're not a Magic Johnson. You're not a Larry Bird. And this was insulting to Isiah Thomas. And Isiah looked at it and said, "Let me show you what a guy my size can do." So one night, while playing against a basketball team in the NBA in the 80s, Isiah Thomas dropped anywhere from 25 to 35 points a game. Whole world was shocked that this little guy could score as many points as a big man. Then another night, he dropped 40 points. Then he drops 45 points. And people are shocked that he's scoring all these points and the way that he would do it. They thought, oh, this is just the NBA season. He can't do this in the playoffs. They get to the playoffs, and he does it again in the playoffs. Now, at this point, they were called the Bad Boy Detroit Pistons. They became the first NBA team to be a threat to the NBA. They became the first professional basketball team in NBA history to have their own private airplane and their own tour bus. And then Isiah Thomas just had to make a book called The Jordan Rules. And by this time period, they made it to the NBA playoffs. And they would lose to the Boston Celtics 4 years in a row. Every time they got to the second round or the third round, they always lost to the Boston Celtics. The first round, they would beat the Atlanta Hawks. Second round, they would take out the 76ers. But when they got to the third round, they would get bitch slapped and knocked around by Larry Bird and Kevin McHale of the Boston Celtics. They would lose 4 years in a row. Pure frustration hell for Isiah Thomas and I think Lambeer. What's that other guy? I think Joe Dumars and those guys. They would get frustrated every time they lose to the Boston Celtics. They get their ass whooped. Finally, one day they had Dennis Rodman come along. And all he had to do was get 10 to 20 rebounds, and that's it. Next thing you know, they gave him a nickname, the Microwave. And they finally knocked off the Boston Celtics in 1988. And finally made their place to a place they hadn't been to before. The NBA Finals. Where he would lose in 5 games to Magic Johnson and the Los Angeles Lakers. But Isiah would not be deterred, as a year later he would return again in 1990, or should I say in 1989, and they would have an NBA Finals rematch. And he would finally beat the Los Angeles Lakers in 6 games, and Isiah won his first NBA championship. And then in 1990, they did something that only a few teams do. He won back-to-back NBA championships. By this time period, Isiah had become the biggest basketball player of all times. And this was in the era of Magic and Larry Bird. You know, Larry Bird was on the verge of retiring. Magic had injuries. And Jordan was on the rise of becoming a big star in the NBA. But at the moment, Isiah Thomas was the basketball player in the East that you had to go through if you wanted to go to the finals. You know, and finally, after winning 2 championships, he would do this to the Chicago Bulls. He would do the same thing to Michael Jordan. That's when they created the Jordan rules, because at that time people thought he had something against Michael Jordan, and he would beat Michael Jordan 5 years in a row. Every time Chicago Bulls played the Detroit Pistons, they always lost. And Detroit was like any basketball team in the East. They're bigger, they're stronger, they're faster, they're unpredictable. They can play all 4 quarters of a game. It don't matter to them if it was a 5-point lead, 10-point lead, 15-point lead. Hell, it could be a 20-point lead. Somehow, some way, they would come back from a long deficit and whoop that ass. And they would do this to Michael Jordan all day, every day. Michael Jordan dropped 25 points. Isiah Thomas drops 25 points. Michael Jordan drops 30 points. Isiah Thomas drops 35 points. Michael drops 40 points. Isiah Thomas come back and drop 40 points. And this frustrated the hell out of Michael Jordan. Like, what I gotta do to stop this little guard? This little point guard that shouldn't be doing all of this. But he is. I send the game in overtime. Isiah comes back with 45 points. And it ain't until they had Phil Jackson, of course. And, you know, when they finally knocked off Detroit, that was the end of that. But even towards the 90s, Isiah still played like I could still score. No one had never seen no one like him. And of course, when we look at it today, there are plenty of point guards that we think about. You know, Allen Iverson. You know, we look at Chris Paul. We look at guards like that today. But Isiah, if it weren't for Isiah Thomas, you wouldn't have a Chris Paul. You wouldn't have an Allen Iverson. If you really think about it. I mean, I'm just trying to tell you, you wouldn't even have a Russell Westbrook if it weren't for Isiah Thomas, who won 2 NBA championships but gone to 3 NBA finals. He gone to the NBA finals 3 times in 4 years, but he won 2 championships, but he went to 3 NBA finals in 4 years. Of course, he's inducted into the NBA Hall of Fame, of course. Now, that's an organization that won 3 championships because, you know, we look at the 2004 Detroit Pistons, but we're going with the ones from the 1980s because they played nothing but defense. All they did was play defense. And when I look at the Golden State Warriors of today, when I see Stephen Curry, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green, what's his name? Andrew Iguodala. When I see Swaggy P, Kevin Durant, and those guys, I see a flashback of the 1980s bad boy Detroit Pistons. These guys are bigger, stronger, faster. It don't matter if you score 5 points, 10, 15, 20 points. Somehow, some way, Golden State come back on that ass. And it's the same thing with Stephen Curry. You can score 20 points. Stephen Curry matches your 20 points. You score 25 points. Stephen Curry matches your 25 points. You score 30, 35. Stephen Curry matches your 30, 35 points. And you're frustrated because no matter what you do, Stephen Curry matches you. Even if you try to be funny in a basketball game, even if the game goes into overtime, he's still right there to score 45, 50 points. And you don't know what to do with a guy that's tall and he plays like a guard. And you get confused on the offense. Now, who's a better basketball player? Now, we do know the Golden State Warriors won 6 NBA championships in their entire 50, 60 years in the NBA. Golden State Warriors won 6 championships in their franchise. Detroit Pistons won 3 championships in a franchise. So the better basketball team franchise would be Golden State without no question. But who's the better basketball player, talented-wise? Now, Isiah Thomas has been most valuable player twice that he won NBA championships. Isiah's been to the finals 3 times in 4 years. Stephen Curry has won 3 NBA championships in 4 years. See the comparisons? Now, both players are the leaders of their basketball teams. Now, here's the difference between Stephen Curry and Isiah Thomas. Isiah Thomas took on the responsibility the minute he was drafted in the NBA and never looked back. And for someone so young, he was very mature for his age. And he would take on all the top superstars, and he would beat all the top superstars. And I'm talking about Isiah Thomas of the 1980s bad boy Detroit Pistons. Stephen Curry beat all the top players, but there are times where if he's not 100% or if he gets hurt, the guy doesn't play. Isiah Thomas played with if he was whether hurt or not hurt. Stephen Curry, he'll try to play hurt, but then most of the time we see him sit out. Now, some people might get angry or offended by this video. It's only the first episode of this, so don't take it personal. Who's a better basketball player? If we're looking at terms of championships and today's media, it's Stephen Curry. But if we're talking about talented-wise, if we're talking about pure heart for the game and for the love of the sport of basketball, it's Isiah Thomas. So I hope you like and you enjoy this video, because in my second video, the second one might be better than the first one. It's going to be called Who's Better, Allen Iverson or Chris Paul? Oh yeah, I'm going to make some NBA videos. And the season finale will probably be Michael Jordan versus Kobe Bryant, because I got some answers for that one. So yeah, this is a series for basketball. I said it was going to lead into a series of basketball videos, and I'll do half and half. you'll probably get 3 basketball videos, and you'll probably get 3 videos of hockey. And when I finish with both sports, then I'm going to go back to my original content. And for those loyal YouTubers, you do know what my original content is. And that's when we'll get to the month of October, and I'll drop some videos, and then you get that highly anticipated video that you've been logging for. So until then, peace.